Okay, so today we're joined by John. Hello, John. Thank you for
Hello.
meeting with all of us. Okay, so John, can you tell us a little bit about your current job and what what those responsibilities entail?
For sure, for sure. First of all, hi everyone. I hope you're doing well, especially during quarantine. My current title, and I say title because it's technically not what I do, but it's fancy. I'm a Senior Production Finance Analyst at a mid-sized company called Studio City, and they work with all the major studios on the television marketing side. We have a huge niche in the daytime marketing sphere. So we do promos, like daily promos. If you ever see an Ellen DeGeneres promo who's been in the news, or a Kelly Clarkson promo, or a live with Kelly and Ryan promo, hey, catch us tomorrow at 7 a.m. That's our company producing that and cutting all that. My job specifically is on the finance side, so the boring stuff. I do a lot of the budgeting for projects, a lot of the negotiations for contracts, the accounts receivable, and just managing the cash flow and making sure we're actually getting paid for what we're doing. Some systems implementation where updating some of our finance systems, and of course doing reports and analysis for our management team. So
John, that seems like a lot of work. You're like a liaison and you're overseeing various teams to kind of put these projects together. I'm sure in like tight deadlines too, right? So
yeah.
on average, how many projects are you juggling at once?
It's hard to say. It really depends how you break down the work. But Caroline, you're the first person that on the first time that I explained something actually kind of understood what I was saying. Like I'm so used to being like the Chandler Bing of the group where it's like, I don't know what he does. He just does stuff. Um, but no, that's a great question. So if you think about just watching daytime television, because that's our niche, but we also have subsidiaries across different industries, but just the daytime sphere, that's, summertime they take off for repeats, but from September all the way to May, you're creating a promotional ad either on digital or on air, commercial every single day. And we have 9 to 10 accounts, depending how you break it down. So, do the math. I'm tracking technically hundreds of thousands of projects throughout the year on top of the special requests that come through. But luckily, if there's a production team, there's an annual contract for most of these things. So I'm not like managing every specific episode, but I do have to keep track of, hey, did the client go over their budget on this account? Managing the workflow aspect internally, and then using the analysis to say, okay, this is a cost we're going to have to eat as the business, or we can charge this to the client. And also exactly what you're saying, managing the relationships internally, but also having that client-facing relationship where, I'm the bad guy, I'm the money guy. So I have to have some type of rapport with these different studio heads or studio marketing heads.
May I ask, I assume you're being bombarded constantly, like phone calls, text messages, like emails, and especially working from home. How many hours do you average like a week?
And I would say I try to keep a healthy boundary. I will get into it in these later questions, I think, but I think trying to end your day at a normal hour is the goal. Not to be lazy, but just to keep that balance, especially during quarantine. But man, it's a seasonal job, and in September it's called launch season. So you'll notice that all the new shows, whether it's your primetime shows or your daytime shows, they all have like, for example, Ellen just launched on Monday. She's been in the headlines, and that's cyclical. So in the launch season, you could put in maybe an extra 2 hours a day. So like a 50-hour work week.
Okay.
But I'm probably the person who's working the least in our company for the production schedule. They're working weekends to do these deliverables, like for launching a new show, things can go wrong. And at the end of the day, this is a very public facing company. So if you don't deliver, then that promotion is not going to show up on millions of people's TVs, right? So some people are working weekends and 60, 80-hour work weeks. So
I feel like that's so much pressure on your shoulders. Like I was so excited to interview you, John, because even like in high school, I'm sorry, even in college, you were always like the most charming, personable guy. Like everyone likes you. You just have this natural, like very kind presence and you're, humorous. And so do you find like it's a difficult balance to put on this like business face while like still kind of, building that rapport and having that kind of sense of charisma with your clients?
well, first of all, blushing. And
Humble
number
yourself,
two,
John.
Caroline, I'll pay you the $20 for you saying that after this call. I
200.
paid her 200. I'm at a mid-sized company. Okay, I'm not getting paid. I'm not the talent getting paid for these promos. Um, it's funny. I think a lot of people feel like, okay, there's a work self and a personal self, and early on in my career, kind of exactly what you're saying, Caroline. Like, oh, you're so personable. Can you be that way in the business world? And I always got that, like, oh, you're too nice and whatnot. And so I tried to separate that, and for me, it just didn't work. I think people can definitely do that, but for me, I carry my personality into my work, and it's just worked for me. And it may be because of the industry where, hey, I'm in finance, but it's still entertainment based, and this mid-sized company, it's part of the reason why I moved out of the corporate structure into the mid-sized companies, because it is a little more laid back. It is a little more, less corporate, and you can kind of make jokes that may not be appropriate, or hear jokes that may not be appropriate. So, going back to the question, I feel like I've never compromised who I am in my career or had to put on a different face.
Yeah, I very much respect that. Like of all the people I've interviewed, like director of sales, like talking to people in the medical field, IT, like that's the common thread in all of them. Everyone's saying like you can't be such a stiff, like a robot. Like they want to see part of your personality at work and they've interview too when they kind of feel you out. So you're in the world of finance, but of course in the bigger umbrella of entertainment, but how did you get your footing in the door? Like, how did that even start? Like that journey?
Oh shoot. I'll try to keep it brief because my journey meandered, and uh, it starts with Caroline. We met at UCI, right? And I didn't know what the heck I was doing. I was a business major, but I think I probably met you because I wanted to do an English minor, and was just doing a lot of those cool English courses that didn't help my career, but were just fun. Which is, I mean, I think you should enjoy education. But then I left you, right? I transferred to USC at the suggestion of my uncle, who's really financially focused. Like, hey, if you're going to do business, try to go into USC because their business program is really good. And through the university, I got an internship, and it wasn't easy. It was like I had to start brand new, and literally I applied to all the more finance businessy jobs, got rejected. I had at least 5 to 10 interviews, and I met people in person. They never called me back. Even Sony didn't call me back until literally the last day of summer break. I even called my mom. I said, hey, I know you're paying double the tuition now, and I failed you. Like, I'm so sorry. And shortly after, I got a phone call, and my gut is someone dropped out, and I got the they called me. They put me on the second tier. Someone dropped out, and they're like, hey, are you still interested in the Sony internship? And that's what really got my foot in the door. From there, they keep you on file, and it didn't come easy again, but I was able to get into an entry-level position using that same experience that I had from the internship. Just, by God's grace, it was just a slight pivot where I got a finance internship, but the full-time position was a marketing internship, a marketing position that required finance and this program called SAP Experience. And then from there, I just was blessed with really great managers who wanted me to grow. Was trying to find my way in marketing because the constant question is like, oh, you want to do marketing? What do you actually want to do? Because within marketing, you can be an actual creative service, someone who does editing. You can be more on the strategy. I didn't want to be an editor, so I tried to go on the strategy side. No positions were available. And once again, SAP is this, the common thread where within marketing, I became the specialist for this SAP finance system. Caroline, do you know what SAP is? I don't want to be throwing this acronym.
No, I don't know what SAP. I'm nodding my head, but I have no idea.
Just Google it. All the major studios use it for their accounting system. It's just like an accounting, you know, book of record for a lot of these huge corporations. It's a German-based company.
Okay.
You know, if you're in marketing and you know finance, you're going to be the only person who knows finance because no one in marketing wants to go towards finance. It just so happened I became an expert. I started training my other peers because this finance system was so clunky. And I parlayed that into figuring out what the next step was. It's like, I had people always ask me, well, what do you want to do? You've been in this position for 2-3 years. What do you want to do? And they kept pushing me. And, you know, I was like, can I do training on this finance system? Because I enjoy teaching in that aspect. And found out there was an internal training team within Sony. I took the initiative to create my own training tutorials because I thought the training that they provided was terrible. And I modeled my training after these YouTube series. You know, if you don't know how to use something in Google or Excel, you just say, how do you do this in Excel?
I know, everything on YouTube.
Exactly. I started modeling my training on that just to train my own team. And, you know, going full circle, I learned how to edit my own videos through the marketing team that I was already with. So kind of going to that, like, no experience is wasted. Everything kind of connects. And then, sorry, I know this is a long story, but because I spent 6 years at Sony and I meandered my way through, I went into this training team. They fired my manager within the training team because they said, hey, we have 3 training teams. Why is there this extra training team? But once again, I had good managers, and I guess I showed initiative where my manager got fired, but the head of my department kept me, used me as kind of utility person of like, hey, this person likes to learn. Let's just put them on whatever project. And because I had this training background, I thought, man, maybe I want to go into HR. Realized HR was not the path for liking people, because in the corporate setting, a lot of HR is looking at people as resources and not really looking at them as complete humans. And I was like, I don't know if I want to do that aspect of HR. And was really figuring out my bearings after about a year or 2 of being in that team. Really loved my manager and was looking, okay, what do I want to do? Do I want to go into consulting? Consulting's not a good life balance if I want to start a family. So was kind of just at a crossroads. And then lo and behold, this Studio City vendor reaches out to me and is like, hey, we have a new position, and kind of went through negotiations there. And that's how I ended up here. I know it's a very long answer, but just wanted to show that I've been all over the place.
No, but that's cool. And like, I like that you're saying, you know, you're kind of reinforcing this idea that all of your like skills and, you know, all the training you've kind of acquired throughout the years, it all snowballs and it manifests itself in different ways, especially at your current job. And I like that, you know, of course, you received a lot of support and mentorship from your managers, and you had good relationships with them. And I know that also helped propel your career, but you're also quite innovative. Like, for you to take the initiative to develop your own training materials to help your team, like that got the attention of, like, you know, people in more superior positions, seeing like what you were doing, taking that, you know, going the extra mile to help yourself and also help those around you. And I think that kind of camaraderie, that kind of like team player mentality is so crucial, especially in a time like this where everything's virtual and we have to rely on each other like more than ever, right?
Yeah,
And
sorry.
so, oh yeah, no worries. Do you need to go talk?
No.
Oh, okay.
For everyone on the call, if you hear banging, I'm in my new condo, and there's contractors here, so I apologize.
No. John just got married and he had 20 babies. I'm just kidding.
Yeah, edit this video.
Oh,
Cut this whole. You were saying I kind of synthesize all my experience into making myself more valuable, even though I didn't have specific experience. My diverse experience kind of helped me become someone who's more adaptable and just has a different way of thinking. And then it was a snowball, right? You gain more experience, you use the manager experience, the manager support that you have, you try to show that you're taking initiative, and you just take the opportunities that present themselves. That's
exactly. Yeah, exactly. And even this position that you're currently at, you are sought after, right? And so that was through your previous connection, right? Like you left a very good impression on your current employers, right? And then later on they got you from Sony and brought you over. Is that what happened?
No, there's two things I think I can touch upon that. There's the importance of internal relationships with managers, right?
Mm-hmm.
As I'm in the entertainment sphere, everybody knows everybody. And my very first manager who hired me at Sony, she ended up leaving, and got a better position at NBC. And now she heads up marketing over there. Now, if we had a bad relationship, then shoot, that affected me because now I deal with all the studios. But because I was actually hired by this other vendor because of the relationships I have, because I have this relationship with Sony, because they already know that I know my former boss at NBC, they're like, okay, this is someone who's already has that rapport with some of our clients. Number two reason why they hired me is I survived the Sony hack. I was on the accounting side, the marketing accounting side, when Sony got hacked and all of our computers were shut down because James Franco released the North Korean movie. I can't even remember what it's called.
The interview. The interview?
The interview.
Yeah,
The
yeah.
interview, yes. So what stood out there was they were one of our major marketing budget clients. I think, I can't give exact figures, but budgets in the millions of dollars, right? And they're a mid-sized company. They're on the hook for this, but by God's grace, I was just able to get them fully paid, not missing a single payment, for their campaigns, because they helped us launch the Queen Latifah show a while back. They're clients with Dr. Oz. So I think that really, stood out to them, and just those little conversations. And I'm sure my manager, really talked me up when they, those high level conversations. And, I just lucked out.
Hey, you didn't get there just by luck, though. I mean, you put in the work. But John, like, do you feel like, having this kind of stressful job at work, being calculative, like detail oriented, do you bring that energy? Like, how do you compartmentalize? How do you separate your work from, like, okay, being at home with your wife? Like, how do you ever turn that part of your brain off? Or do you feel like you're constantly, like, thinking about work in your periphery?
That's a good question. I would say generally no. I try not to bring work home. But I think the higher you go, everything has a cost, right? If you want a higher salary, whatever it is, they're not just giving you that money for free. So I'm kind of at a quote senior, analyst level, where their definite expectations are different from when I first started at Sony, right? But I think just the mentality I take is do everything that needs to be done to get the job done. But at the same time, not to hang my hat on my identity, my self-worth on my job, if that makes sense. So I definitely want to do a good job, and I definitely want to keep learning. But at the end of the day, what I've seen is some people just take their jobs too seriously. And granted, if you're a neurosurgeon, you better take your job seriously. But a great phrase that my boss told me every time was, hey, it's just television. We're not doing brain surgery. So and I kind of reached that peak of like, deadlines. I didn't, I made a mistake, or I'm not doing enough. I just kind of take a step back and bring that perspective.
I like that. Yeah. I mean, that's all part of that work-life balance and also just being able to manage stress, which is kind of segueing into my next question. How do you manage that kind of stress and pressure? Because so many people, as you are managing like various teams in different departments, they're all their eyes are looking towards you. So and you're kind of like the face of it, whether it's a
Mm,
success or whether the project may be a failure, right? So how do you manage those stress levels?
yeah. I think it goes back to that point that I just said. Remembering our career doesn't really define us, and
Mm,
if it does, then I would say, shoot, I hope it doesn't fully define you. I know we spend a lot of time on our jobs, but we're so much more than our jobs, and that's why going even back to the first question, right? Just trying to be myself in my job and be consistent. Um, and that I think ties into realizing it's not all on me. I can easily say, oh shoot, I am the face of this company. I need to carry myself a certain way, and um, I need to make sure everything's on point, or else we are totally going to, you know,
mm,
be screwed. Our finance might be screwed. I think there's a healthy way to look at it and an unhealthy way to look at it. Where yes, what my job is important. I better do the best I can, but also just remembering, shoot, no one person can destroy. Maybe if I was a CEO, I would say that differently. And if there are any CEOs on this call, hats off to you. I don't know how you manage it, but I I just remember for myself. Okay, it's not all on my shoulders, but then that flows into an outward action of just keeping a constant communication with my team and my managers. So luckily, I'm not at the point where I'm the head. I still have someone above me, and if
mm.
I ever get to this point, just remembering it's okay to be not okay. Um, I think especially during this time in quarantine, but um, no one rewards suffering in silence. And so I think more than ever in this stage of my career, I've actually had to have some difficult conversations of, hey, understanding that they have expectations, but voicing what I'm already doing and voicing, hey, if there are things I would want to grow, but if there are other things expected of me, I cannot I have a limit. And just learning how to communicate that respectfully, learning how to even make my job easier and disperse my responsibilities. I don't think I have a silver bullet answer for you, Caroline. Um, I think it's always changing, but it's a constant managing expectations of myself with myself, because I think a lot of times we're our own harshest critics, but then also managing the expectations of our managers. And that's something I've heard throughout my career from a lot of mentors. You have to manage your manager, because no one's going to care about you more than you care about yourself.
I like that a lot, John. But do you feel like, let's say you're just recently brought on board, right? And you're getting up to speed with like the work culture, the responsibility.
Mm,
But at what point, like if you feel overwhelmed, at what point do you feel like, you have kind of like the right to even bring that up to your manager? Is it earlier on? I mean, I tell my students, developing the social skills are not only important for you to connect with your coworkers, but so much of it is like
mhm.
your relationship with your boss, right?
Yeah. Um, Man, I think that question can go in so many ways. Can you just rephrase kind of the timeline, right? Because you could be just joining the company and like, oh man, you don't want to be all of a sudden the first weekend, right? First,
Uh,
are you asking when should you bring that in, or?
or yeah, like any kind of hiccup, obstacle, anything that you feel like, it impedes on your workload that you want to communicate to your boss. Like for example, I have a student named Patty, and she's also in the world of finance and recently started her job. And it's a lot. She's constantly going through these trainings, like it's all day on top of the workload, and she's studying English as well. And so it's quite a bit to juggle, but she's really like determined, and she works incredibly hard.
Mm,
But of course, we're all human. We have limitations. Like she
yeah.
has a family as well. And so at what point, like, how do you find your way in? Like, what's your advice in like bringing up a personal issue or a problem or a concern? How do you like introduce that, or like how do you even start that conversation with your boss?
Mm. Um, and there is no catch-all for that. Um, and even there's so many situations, right? So many types of personalities for managers. But the one core, and this is, I don't mean this to sound facetious or cynical, but I think it's just healthy to know, no one cares.
Mm.
No one cares about how hard your job is. If anything, the the goal, and this is another nugget from my manager, is just to look at it from the perspective of how do I make my manager's job easier, right?
Mm-hmm.
From that perspective, attacking the situation. So just going in knowing you're gonna feel like terrible and just overwhelmed, but knowing at the end of the day, your manager already has their own set of problems and your manager probably feels overwhelmed, right? And so they're not going to be able to take on your emotional burden. Now going forward, it's, I don't want to sound cliche, but it just is what it is, where it's not, the goal is not to work harder. The goal is to make your life easier and find ways to quote unquote work smarter, right? So looking at your job and seeing what's really necessary, especially for someone who's overwhelmed. There's just going to be jobs that are overwhelming. I'm not taking away from that. But if you're overwhelmed, asking yourself, if I'm just doing what the previous person in my position was doing, was what they were doing really necessary? Because a lot of times, especially in bigger corporations, I don't know, in small corporations, everyone's wearing multiple hats, but in bigger corporations, sometimes you're just continuing a process that no one really even needs, or you're doing it in a way that is antiquated, right? Like it's just, oh, it's the way it's done, is an old adage that a lot of old corporate heads have. But just kind of seeing, is there a better way? And pointing to the way that even going back to that training uh, anecdote that I had about me creating those training tutorials, it took a lot of work, but the reward was there because now I didn't have to be the one fielding questions, because I became this guy of like, everyone's asking these questions. I'm like, okay, everyone's asking this question. I need to find a way where I can just answer it easily. So I didn't only help the team, but I was helping myself, where instead of having to type out a manual, instead of having to take screenshots by screenshot, I said, hey, I have these video tutorials, check them out. Now, if you have questions, let me know. And I think every job has ways where you can just save time here, save time there. And finally, the final piece is, once you've done all that research on your own, then going and presenting your case to your manager, right? Like, hey, I've looked into this. Is this necessary? Or, hey, I've looked into this. I found a better way to do that. What do you think? So presenting solutions to your problems versus just going to your manager with your problems.
I like that.
No,
Yeah.
presenting various scenarios where you're almost solving your own problem and then just getting the stamp of from your manager, if possible.
Hmm. John, being in this kind of senior position, I assume with COVID, I don't know, has the company been growing? Like, have you been bringing people on board, or have you been cutting back on people? Like,
Mm. I think that question, I want to lead off with something else. I just want to tell the group, but man, the career, if you look at my career, it's so unpredictable. I understand there's people who plan out their career, right? If you're a lawyer, you better plan out and go to law school and whatnot. But I think for the maybe 75% or the majority of us, a lot of our careers will meander, and a lot of us feel like, oh, I got to make the right moves, or put so much pressure, like, oh, if I make this decision, if I make the wrong career decision, then I'm going to be stuck and I'm going to be totally screwed and all this, which I'm just telling you, it's not the case. Like you said, for some people, if you're going to be a doctor, yes, please go to get your PhD and prepare for that. But for a lot of us, you can't predict it. I mean, look at the market now. Now, going back to your question, our company now, a lot of people were saying, why the heck would you jump from Sony, this multinational company, this successful company, this company that's, I should have bought stock when we got hacked because the stock price jumped so high. You know, they're doing really well. And I'm leaving a great team. I'm leaving a great manager. Why would you jump to this mid-sized company who's in daytime promos? What the hell are you thinking? And for me, it just made personal sense for the exact role, the stage of my life that I was at. And guess what? Like, out of all the entertainment spheres, out of all the sectors in entertainment, daytime television is the only thing not being affected by COVID. Because you think about it, right? Films, you need a set, you need people. All the daytime talk show hosts, they're just filming themselves like this.
Yeah.
What they did for the past 3 months, and our company was still hit. Of course, we had to make layoffs, but generally speaking, I mean, we're doing well. We didn't have to take that many pay cuts, and now we're once again growing again, because if you watch some TV, everyone's back in the studio for daytime television. They just remove the audience, but they're in, you know, they're all glammed up and everything. So I would say, man, you can't predict career, you know. I'll say it once, I say it again, you know, it's God's grace that I'm at where I'm at. And this company that I'm at is just pretty smart and forward thinking, where they know the daytime sphere is antiquated and the profit margins are going to shrink. But we have, you know, we have relationships with every single supplier, you know, thinking of economics, thinking of supply and demand. It's a very relationship based industry, and we just have relationships with all these, every single major player, every single major studio. And so this revenue stream is easily repeatable because it's relationship based and contracts are approved, you know, years in advance. So we're going to be good in the short term. And then forward looking, you know, we've expanded our digital arm. We've expanded even a political arm of marketing. We have a production arm. So we're taking calculated risks here and there. And, you know, not to just market my own company, but we're doing well, and we're expanding into the digital age.
Nice, John. Do you feel like, you know, I know you mentioned that, yeah, there were some setbacks, but it seems like for the most part, there's pretty well off, like in the sense of like stability for your company, fortunately. And I know, yeah, the pressure of like jumping ship from Sony, I know that from the outside, many people might have kind of judged you for that, but I'm so proud that you made that decision for yourself, because everyone, you turn to other people, they're going to give you advice on this and that, but at the end of the day, it's like your life, your decision, your choice. And so kudos to you, because I think you made the right one.
Thanks.
You working internationally, John, you're exposed to people from all over the world. And one concern my students have, or they feel very self-conscious about, are accents and like being, you know, incomprehensible. From your perspective, have you had run-ins like that? Have you had experiences dealing with people with like heavy accents that are difficult to understand?
Yeah. So sharing my corporate experience on the Sony side, the last position that I held involved a lot of international coordination. And so, you know, we were connecting with India or people in Latin America or just different territories. You know, Sony, I don't think a lot of people realize, but Sony is just a multinational. They got people everywhere, just all different types of local offices. So I've come into that with Sony. And then currently I actually work closely within my team, a lady who's French Canadian. And, you know, she always kind of is jokey and self-deprecating on herself, you know, with, I'm sorry, you can't hear me, or like, I'm sorry, you can't understand me, or, oh, sorry, it doesn't really translate like this. You know, she has to ask us questions for, you know, certain American idioms or Western idioms.
Uh-huh.
So I've seen that, but at the end of the day, I think the work speaks for itself, right? Even if my current coworker can seem sometimes abrasive, or, I don't even know if it's language wise, but stylistically, right? She's just cuts to the point sometimes isn't as like corporate massagey as we are, like I think around the corporate sphere we tiptoe and try to be as nice as possible. Sometimes she doesn't have that. But at the end of the day, the work speaks for itself. She's super detail oriented, and maybe in a client facing role, that would be a challenge. No joke. I don't know if she'd be able to fully connect with our folks on the studio side, because she's more internal facing. But at the end of the day, I haven't seen an issue where it's like, oh, because this person has an accent, they're less intelligent. I would say, in emails, it's tough. Because like face to face, you feel that, but I would say email and writing could present challenges if you struggle in that area.
Yeah, I really appreciate your like just being very straightforward and direct about that, because there are factors that will hinder you. For example, like we've talked about this for my class, like your writing will be scrutinized and you never know where that message will go and where it will float around the company. Speaking, of course, there's more forgiveness. You make a mistake, you ask your coworker, they can help you out. In our class, we're learning a lot of like idioms, phrasal verbs to kind of get them up to speed with like the American culture, because I want them to be able to connect on a like personal level with people like in and outside the office.
Yeah.
But do you see like, have you come across emails that just have not been like maybe the standard of like in terms of professionalism?
Yes. The reason why I went is in my Sony days, we were connecting with India, and it's just grammatical errors or typos, right? And at the end of the day, it's tough because you can't really blame that person. And we, as on the corporate side, understood, hey, English isn't their first language. So I think it really depends across industries, right? In a finance field, maybe not as important, but if you're going into marketing, and or even legal marketing, or the legal field where you got to be on your P's and Q's. I'm just being honest. I think there are going to be challenges.
Yeah, that's valid. Well, John, I know you're busy, so we're gonna start closing out this interview. But and you'll pay me my 200. But we've talked about work personalities, and so I always close out the interview asking people, what are like 3 work personalities that best summarize or describe you?
Okay, I would say my work personalities are hopefully the same as my normal personality. So I describe myself as honest, maybe too honest sometimes, adaptable, and teachable. And I just differentiate between the two, because adaptable means you can just fit in wherever you need and not complain. Oh my gosh, just that's one word of advice. Just don't complain at work. It's so easy to do it. I mean, just do it on your own time, but just don't do it at work. So adaptable is just being able to fit in and learn on the go. But then teachable, I think it's really important to be humble wherever you're at, whatever level you're at. And people see that. People see people who are both humble and adaptable, and people who are always trying to learn and trying to ask questions. So hopefully, I mean, that's how I see myself. Hopefully that's how I'm being perceived.
I don't think humble, or I think
No,
you got ego.
that's why I didn't say humble. I said teachable. I said
I'm
an
just
aspect of
joking.
teachability is humility.
That's true. I like that idea of being teachable. Well, thank you, John, for your time and sharing your insight. The world of entertainment is just such a crazy one. Like, I only dabbled in it just a tiny bit in movie
Come
production.
back. Yeah, come back.
I don't know if I can handle that. It's so it's so stressful because it is a world where everyone knows each other and you can never burn bridges. You always have to put your best foot forward, right? So there's a ton of pressure in addition to like the financial part that you're overseeing. So you should feel very proud of yourself. Well, John, thank you so much. I'm going to close out this interview. Any last words of advice or something uplifting?
Yeah. So I started with no one cares, right? So I gotta definitely uplift you. The no one cares is true, but it's tongue in cheek of just remembering, caring about people, knowing no one cares about you, but you don't have to be that person. And I think that's just what has gotten me far. And people see, people are smarter than we give them credit for, and they see sorry, they see the unspoken things. So just putting other people first.
I found this on the web for unspoken things.
I've never used Siri. I don't even know how Siri understood what I was saying. Siri, so yeah, just that, not letting your career define you, hopefully. And then the last thing that I didn't say throughout the interview was, in my opinion, it's just a game. And the things that I'm telling you worked for me, but it may not work for you. And the things that worked for me may not work for someone else, or whatever works for you may not work for me. And just like in any game, there's many styles, and luckily for this game, I think winning can be defined by so many people. And so, it goes back to like not putting your identity in your career and just defining success for yourself. Such a cliche, but
It's true though.
just if I could just be yourself and not have to fit in a corporate mold, and not have to even take these types of interviews and be like, oh, this is what I must do, but just taking all these bits of information and then tailoring it to yourself. That's what I would say.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Thank you for your time, John.